So Father Francis Tiso in the mid-1990s actually came to Tibet, financed by the Institute of Noetic Sciences, to study this crazy phenomenon that's the after effect of practicing this Tibetan Buddhist teaching. Because what happens is you achieve something called rainbow body, and that's the main subject of what we're here to talk about, and how this all relates to UFOs and synchronicity. He actually personally witnessed the ascension of this man, Khenpo Achos. This man actually dialed back the clock. He told people when it was going to happen. He knew when it was going to occur. They wrapped him up in burial cloth. His body slumps over. He appears dead. They wrap him up in burial cloth. And then, during the course of 7 days, his body started to shrink in size. Now, bones don't shrink in size. Skeleton isn't going to shrink. Even if you burn a human body, you still find the skeleton in many cases, unless it's really high heat like cremation. Well, his skeleton, his bones were shrinking, as was the whole body. And as they looked at his face, it got younger and younger looking inside. There were rainbows coming out of the hut where this was happening. There was angelic voices singing. There was wonderful odors coming out, like perfume. All this stuff is taking place because he had achieved what their teaching was there to do, which is to get you to the next level of human evolution. And I ultimately believe this is everybody's destiny. Tibet just got a nice inheritance from the universe that made it a lot easier for them, and we'll talk about how that happened. These are their stupas. This is a symbol of the human energy field, actually. That circle up on top is the crown chakra, and that little room is where the heart is. And then the column, that like cone that's red, it represents the spine and the energy field that goes up the spine as you activate your light body. So they have these all over the place in Tibet. And they have a lot of really beautiful architecture. And so part of what you're going to see is like a really fun slideshow of some of the Tibetan architecture and the places where these really neat things happen. So a common and widely reported rainbow body event, a guy that sort of restarted this because it had fallen out of favor. It had kind of like lost, like people weren't making it anymore. Until the 1800s, this guy was a major figure in Tibet who kind of jump-started the whole thing and figured it out and got it to work and then taught other people what he did. This is actually what he looked like. This is an illustration that he posed for. The ears are probably exaggerated, but otherwise, you know, there he is. So Nyala Pima Dundul sort of took the old teachings and put them all together and created something he called the Union of Primordial Essences. And in 1872, he actually achieved rainbow body in front of 500 witnesses, and they all were going in and out of the hut where this was happening. And after 7 days, he left behind a small body made of nothing but burnt ash. That's all that was left of his human body. They then hid away the little ashy figurine to keep it secure because they didn't want people to see what had happened, which is understandable. They were afraid it would be stolen because it was such a big deal. And then many of his own students also attained rainbow body. So as a result of this, the rainbow body practice was rejuvenated in Tibet. This is more recent now. And before he left, he already had the ability to control matter with his mind, and so he adhered to the ancient tradition of leaving a footprint behind. So what happened here was that they had a flagstone patio, and this is the underneath side of the flagstone. He was walking along, this was just a typical patio, and he mushed his foot into the stone. And what you're seeing here is the bottom, not the part where the footprint is, but the underneath of the stone. Now notice how smooth it is. This suggests that with his mind, he was somehow able to transform the stone into something almost like a liquid or taffy type of consistency. There's no irregularities left in the rock. It's stretched like a balloon. It's very, very interesting. And you're going to see many, many more of these footprints as we go throughout the talk. So another key figure that we need to talk about is a major leader in Tibetan Buddhism who actually did pull it off, Achuk Lama Rinpoche. Here he is. Now this is a lot more recent now. I'm just giving you some examples that are recent. He was the head of the Nyingma sect, which is the sect that has the rainbow body teaching in it. And he meditated for 43 years. That's all he was doing. with Master Tulku Arik Rinpoche. And in 1983, while he was in the midst of doing all this meditation, he established the largest monastery in Tibet called Yarchen Gar. It's a holy city where most of the Rinpoches and Lamas now live in Tibet. This is, in fact, the largest collection of Rinpoches and Lamas in the entire world, and here's an aerial photograph of it today. So it's really big and surrounded by water, which interestingly, I believe that acts as sort of like a conduit to help their meditation go along. But it's a major, major city, and he was the head of it, and he earned the right to be there because he was such an adept meditator. So here he is, late in life, and of course I wore my orange shirt tonight to kind of like commemorate the Tibetan Buddhist robe. It's the closest I can come to right now. I didn't want to come out here wearing a robe. That would be way too new age, right? But I want to point out something. This guy ascended, and look at his teeth. Okay, you don't have to be perfect. He's missing some teeth. He hasn't brushed in a while. It's okay. He still made it. You don't have to be a glamour queen. You're going to be fine. So this is actually the room that he was living in when he ascended. We actually have all this stuff that we can still look at. And it's, you know, a combination of ancient architecture and modern amenities like glass windows. So he actually, because he had meditated so long, the reports are many people saw him do miracles. And these miracles included that he was able to put handprints and footprints in rock wherever he wanted. He could manifest little statues out of thin air. And he also could download new spiritual teachings. This is called termas. And termas also are something where you pull in information from an existing scroll that's hidden away in some faraway location. And then you're graded on how closely you transcribed the original without ever seeing it. And you don't pass unless you get every single word correct. Yeah, it's like Tibetan remote viewing, but on an extreme level. So they definitely believed in channeling, and they believed also that the teachings were evolving, that there's new information that comes out as time goes on that helps you further on your rainbow body quest that they have. So he could stay underwater for days without any harm to himself. He didn't need to breathe, and he could see into the future without any impediment. He had prophecy ability, and he could make visual manifestations. So what you're now going to see is a photograph in which he wanted to show people his rainbow body before he actually ascended. Now, what you're about to see, bear in mind there is no lotus flower in the image, and there is nothing in the image that the original photo was nothing but him sitting there with his legs crossed. Hold on a second. Him sitting there with his legs crossed, and this is what we actually saw on the film. He projected that lotus from somewhere, and he projected an image of his energy body, and you can kind of see his crossed leg above the lotus, but that's it. The rest is all stuff that he manifested in the image. Question in the back.
Yeah, was there any documentation on him being able to stay underwater? I mean, I would think that would be...
Well, that's the problem. There is a community out there, but they don't want the West involved. That's why Francis Tissot was so important, because he was a Westerner who came and witnessed the rainbow body, and actually the Chinese military witnessed the rainbow body. So they don't really like to brag about this stuff. But after he died, his body shrank down to a little figurine of ash, and then what they did is they dressed it up and they made it wear clothes. So, and this is to commemorate his ascension. Now, all these people that saw this, obviously this is real. This is not some fake thing. And they got fans on it because they're worried about it. Again, we'll see the fans in the previous thing. They don't want it to spoil. I guess they might have been worried about it rotting. But anyway, this is on display. You can actually go see it. Another Tibetan Buddhist monk who recently attained rainbow body is Tertan Chakyur Lingpa. And this is his rainbow body. Again, it's a little figurine. They wrap it up in cloth. You're not actually seeing the ash. It's all been wrapped in fabric. But this is another shrine to him. And he leaves this behind for them. We're also going to see now the rainbow body of Chagye Trichen. And here he is. And so when he died, he also left behind a rainbow body, and they locked it up. Notice there's a lock on this case because they're worried about people stealing these. But they dress it up. And so this has happened. There's 160,000 cases of rainbow body occurring, and oftentimes they leave this little body behind. So this is Jirao Kenpo. And he's kind of slouching in his seat. You see, he ought to stand up straight a little more. And here's another illustration of the stupa. And what they do is they put the rainbow body a lot of times inside that little room in the middle that represents the heart to show how they opened their heart, and that's how they got rainbow body to occur. Now we're also going to talk a little bit more about another guy who achieved rainbow body. This is Karma Rinpoche. And this just happened last November. So it's a very new, exciting story. He passed away on November the 11th, 2013. He was 5'9". 14 days it took. His body shrank down to 8 inches tall, and everything in his entire body, including the skeleton, shrank 80%. And that's what they call small rainbow body. And this is a picture of him. And here's another picture of him. And then last but not least, this is the wrapped up version of what's left of his body. And supposedly he also left these 2 footprints behind, which they then painted. So he was able to mush his foot into stone. We're going to see a lot more of these as time goes on. So when Lama Achuk, that guy who was the leader of the whole Yarchangar monastery, when he created the rainbow body effect for himself and ascended, essentially, over 100,000 visitors came to pay tribute. This is a real photograph of what happened. So you can see the massive amount of respect that he had, and all these guys are in monk robes. They're all wearing red. You see that? So this was a huge event. Well, here's an example of what you don't want to do. This is a guy, Rangjung Rigpe Dorje, who died in the 1970s. And he did not achieve rainbow body. So not everybody does. And the problem is, this is why Tibetan Buddhists are kind of finicky. You don't want to show off that you have magic powers. But he did. He sat for a photograph and said that he would make himself transparent for the photograph, and a Westerner took this photo of him actually doing that. There is no retouching, there is no airbrushing. This was witnessed by people. He was sitting there. His body actually looked like this in person. And then they took the photograph. And you can actually see through his head. Notice there's that bar behind his head where the head is. You can actually see the design of the bar. But that is showing off, and he blew it. So it's important that like these people don't go too far with it. I want to talk more about the Tibetans because this is where it all starts to make sense. The second Buddha, or Padmasambhava, did not have a mother or father. He showed up in late 700s AD. The Tibetans said he arrived in an egg that came out of the sky, and he told the people that he came from the cosmos. He had clearly remarkable ascended abilities. As soon as he arrived, he already could do levitation. The name Padmasambhava means born from the lotus, which is the UFO that he came out of. He's also called Guru Rinpoche, or the second Buddha, translates as precious guru. And he studied Vajrayana Buddhism, but then made a big trip and traveled throughout all these regions in the Himalayas, Nepal, Bhutan, India, and Tibet. And this is his picture. It almost looks like he sort of apologetically penciled in facial hair, doesn't it? Because it's like, it looks like it's just a tattoo. And probably that's because as an ET, he doesn't even have facial hair normally. But maybe for the time, everybody had beards, and so he wanted to kind of fit in. He was a little insecure. I mean, give him a break. So here he is on his flying lotus. And as I said the other day, here he is with a very tripped out look in his eyes. He's definitely had the medicine on that one. Notice he also has an awakened pineal gland symbol, the third eye, and he's doing a mudra with his hand. Now, after he did this whole large ministry in Tibet, at the end of his life, he turned into the rainbow body, and this is what it actually looked like. He became this pinwheeling rainbow of light, and it happened spontaneously. So here's the history. He I can talk. He brought Buddhism from Tibet to India. He brought Buddhism from India to Tibet in the 8th century. The indigenous religion in the Himalayas was the Bon, and he blended that with Buddhism, and that's what created Tibetan Buddhism. He had extraordinary abilities, including the ability to fly, and he didn't just fly by himself. There are eyewitnesses during this time of history seeing whole crowds of people flying through the air like a flock of birds with Padmasambhava. He could levitate a whole group of people, and they're just flying around. And this was widely seen when he would travel. That's the way he was traveling. Telekinesis, he could move objects around with his mind very easily. Apports, he could manifest anything he wanted out of thin air, just there it is in his hand. And he could telepathically talk to people in their mind, and he melded Buddhist teachings with the Bon. And this is what created Tibetan Buddhism as we now know it, called the Nyingma sect, and I showed you that Yarchangar monastery before, which is Nyingma sect Buddhism. During the same time frame, other ETs were already around and teaching Buddhist people their religion. This is around 800 AD again, and this is when Borobudur was built in Indonesia, which totally fits the pyramid formula. Isn't that interesting? Pyramids are not necessarily that old, but this looks an awful lot like the step pyramids in Mesoamerica, but nobody talks about this one in Indonesia. They just say, oh, it's a temple. No, that's not like any normal temple. That's a pyramid. And there's all these little Buddhas up at the top. So this was built by the king of the Salyendra dynasty in 7th, 8th century with the help of his friends, located in the town called Magelang in the middle of Java Island in Indonesia. And it's built in 9 levels to symbolize the 9 yanas of Buddhist religion. And so there it is from the side. And in my Gaiam TV, I have a whole elaborate thing on this where I show you all the little Buddhas and what they all mean. But I don't have time to do all that now. We got to get through all this. So Padmasambhava ascended at the end of his life and turned into the rainbow body. And this was a great surprise and inspiration to the people who were around him at the time. And now we have 160,000 documented cases of people achieving light body thanks to these teachings of Nyingma Buddhism that he created. The central practice is called Dzogchen, and that is also known as Ati Yoga or the Great Perfection. Okay, so I'm seeing defections. People are going to the bathroom. Is it bad enough that we should take 5 minutes to do that and then we'll do the last 35 minutes, or do you want me to just go straight through? Okay, the majority has it. So sorry if people are like this. I can make it. I'm kind of on the edge, but I'll be fine. I'll just go over here for a minute. No Coke bottles today. Next time. All right, so Dzogchen is the same thing they were calling the mother light, the natural primordial state of being. That's what you have to get to if you want to be able to hit the rainbow body. All their teachings and meditations are aimed at achieving this condition. This is pure, all-encompassing primordial clarity, and you realize that that's the nature of all beings. This is a part of us that is timeless and has no form, and yet it is the defining nature of the universe. Although it has no form, it is capable of perceiving, experiencing, reflecting, and expressing all form. So this is a greater reality, and I talked in my other lectures about this new science that shows that space and time are the emanations of a geometric form that is outside of space and time as we know it, but it gives rise to all of the visible universe. And it does so, it gives rise to the universe without being affected by it in any ultimate permanent way. It's like a mirror that reflects with complete openness, but is not affected by its reflection. So that's a very interesting way of looking at the universe that, as I've said in other talks, our latest science is catching up to. So again, this is an actual eyewitness drawing of what Padmasambhava looked like when he hit rainbow body. You notice that you can still see the lapels on his clothing. So his body was disappearing before the clothes. In many of these cases, the clothes actually drop to the ground and there's no body left in them, but the clothes are still intact. Sometimes the clothes also disappear when it's a spontaneous case. And I want to be clear that sometimes Christians have done this too. If you really follow the teachings of Jesus, you will get to this level, because the whole core of the teaching, as I said, is, can every thought in your mind be a loving thought? Well, thankfully, Tibetan Buddhism has preserved a much more intact version of how to do this than any other religion, and that's why people are still ascending even recently. And it's called Trekcho. This is where you recognize that the universe is a mirror, and they want you to meditate on the mirror as a very important principle. Now, this is also something that the Law of One recommends. Everything around you is a mirror. That means that when you look at someone else, you're looking at your own face. Now, trip out on that one for a minute. If we do that, if we see everyone as our mirror, then how could you be angry at anyone else unless you're angry at yourself? And if that's true, then you need therapy. Like me. I need therapy. I got angry today. But it's all due course. So I'm learning. We're all learning. You see that the cosmos is your mirror, that this is all hologram, and that there's an original identity that made the cosmos, and it's available to you in the purity of each moment. If you go into the love of the moment and you feel that clarity and purity, then boom, you're in there. So this is a knowledge, when you get this state and you realize that everybody is your mirror and you're able to see yourself everywhere, and you do that lovingly, you create a state called Rigpa. And there's many different ways to get to Rigpa. They acknowledge this, but they created a way called Trekcho that they say is the fastest way to get there. It's not the only way, but it's the fastest way. And Trekcho is often, the analogy that's used is of the knife, recognizing and cutting through tension and rigidity. So while you're meditating, what you want to do is visualize a knife or a sword, and you're cutting the cords. These meditators, what they're doing all day, okay, just to be clear, they're in a cave, they're blissing out, they're meditating, they're breathing deeply, and they are constantly cutting the cords. They're looking at all the memories of things that were not loving, all the obligations that people tried to lay on them. You owe me, I blame you, you are guilty, and you just cut the cords, cut the cords, cut the cords, go back to love. Realize that everything happens for a reason, and as long as, once you've balanced your karma through forgiving others and forgiving yourself, there's nothing left, there's no cords. People try to lay their cords on you, and you just gently cut them. And so that's what they're doing all the time. And my readings often use that analogy of the hot air balloon, where they say you want to cut the cords that are weighing the balloon down. And once you cut enough of them, the balloon starts to rise. You also, of course, master the art of contemplation and visualization. And they have a specific mandala that I'm going to show you in the next slide that they use for their visualization. The meditation is done in a state of unity consciousness. So again, the mirror is very important. Seeing the whole world as your mirror. Meditate on unity consciousness, and then they're also toning. And the sound they tone is ah. Just like we've heard in other cultures. Amen in Christianity, Aum in Buddhism, or in Hinduism rather. And in Tibetan Buddhism it's ah, but it's the same basic idea. That's the character that is in Sanskrit for the letter ah, and you're actually supposed to visualize that character. It's a complex little symbol to memorize. There's a lot of interesting little things going on in that symbol. Now, does this mean that if you don't do this, you're not going to ascend? No. In the Law of One, they say that the ability to steadily hold a visual image in the mind through all these different layers of meditation is what ultimately allows you to create your energy body in any realm of the universe that you want. The ability to hold a steady image in your mind is very important in meditation, because that's what ultimately allows you to construct yourself anywhere in the universe, because you're accessing the universe now as pure information. And they also recommend that as you see this character ah, that you envision a rainbow of light around it, because it's activating your rainbow body. So it's activating all the colors of the rainbow spectrum. So the Trekcho practice involves purifying yourself of anything that obscures you from seeing the light of the universe. You witness your karma, and this is the cutting of the cords again, and you forgive your karma, you forgive yourself and you forgive those who hurt you, and you dissolve it, you cut the cords until it holds no cause, until karma's not pushing on you. And you'll know this because you feel better and better. You feel a blissful state. Your physical body is then calmed to this death-like state that they call samadhi. I'm sure we've all heard that before. And there is a deep state of union with your true consciousness, your true identity that occurs on a conscious level. Now, that may appear to be the end, but it's not. There's a further, deeper level of final practice they call togal after you've already achieved this level of realization. And at this level, you actually become the universe. Rather than just observing the universe and seeing that you are the universe, you become the universe. And at that point, you finish the job and your body dissolves back into the universe. You clear all blockages, all karma, and all thoughts. And that's very interesting. One of the really cool things, I have a friend who's very into Tibetan Buddhism. All the Nyingma sect people are coming to the U.S. They come to California sometimes. And there was a seminar 2 years ago where the Buddhist monks who are actually achieving rainbow body gave us a new level of the teaching that had been secret up until then. And they said, in order to reach the rainbow body, you must transcend hope and transcend fear. Now, transcend fear, okay, I'll buy that. But transcend hope? Just before I give you the answer, think for a minute, why would they say transcend hope? Okay, what do you think? Yeah, you're letting go. And what were you going to say?
Hope is also balanced with doubt, so you're letting go of doubt.
You're both correct. And yeah. That's right. He said hope is in the future, and if you want to be in the 0 point, you have to be in the moment. So all of you guys are correct. Guys and girls. Some people don't like it if you say guys for women. Transcending hope means that you don't have to hope because you know what is. Hope implies, oh, I hope things are going to be this way, but they're really not because it sucks. So no, it doesn't suck. It's all good. The universe is perfectly balanced. Everything is fine. You're fine. It's all okay. You don't need to hope that it's going to be better. And in the Law of One, they explain that the highest teaching that gets you to rainbow body is when you embrace the sacramental nature of all things. And that is done by observing the universe and observing everything that's happening the way that it is and being okay with it the way that it is, which is very difficult. Because you can look at things that are happening now or things that have happened, you can say, well, that's an atrocity, that's a disaster, that's terrible. But it's all part of a sacred continuum to awaken us, and we will all awaken. We will all get the message. Nobody is left behind. Everybody makes it. It's just a question of when. And the ETs are just here to try to speed up the process of how soon it is before we make it. So you want to clear thoughts, because thoughts are actually creating a separate identity. And pure awareness is without time and it's without space. It has no form and it has no beginning or ending. It's just now. So you can step into that now, and it's very, very blissful, but you're not thinking, and you don't have to hope, and you don't have to fear. So let me point out the fear thing, because this is another really, really important one. If you are on the highest level Ascension class right now, if you're a graduate student of Ascension, then guess what? You're probably on the class of, we don't want you to ever be afraid of anything. But how does your higher self get you there? It scares the living piss out of you. You can see I'm focusing on piss right now. But that's what happens when you do 3 hours and you only take one break at the beginning. So it scares you. The universe is deliberately going to manifest fear so that you will not be afraid of the things that used to scare you. So you get the same stuff. This is a great line in the Law of One that totally relates to Tibetan Buddhism, where they say, catalyst, which is something that upsets you, basically. Catalyst is what causes growth. Catalyst will repeat until it is no longer useful. Catalyst will repeat until it is no longer useful. Well, shit, I ought to find out what useful means, right? That's the next thing. What does useful mean? How is it useful? And then they say this: any experience that changes the state of your consciousness is a useful experience. So here's the deal. The universe is trying to guide you into a state where every thought that you have is this pure love. Anything that the universe can send your way that makes you not feel pure love, where it changes the state of mind, it actually creates movement in consciousness. You get angry, you get offended, you get sad, you get jealous, you have guilt, you have fear. That's useful. Why? Because it's contorting your mind, it's creating movement, it's doing something to stir up the water so that you eventually will have to seek out pure, primordial, peaceful awareness again. By disrupting it, it actually enhances your quest for it, right? So you're going to keep going through the same BS over and over again. You're going to have to be terrified. You're going to have to face your deepest, darkest fears, and you'll go through that over and over again until it no longer bothers you. And I had a dream recently where this shaman woman is literally shoving a poisonous snake right in my face. And she's saying, I'm going to keep doing this until you see that this is God and that you're no longer afraid. Yeah.
I had a similar dream 2 years ago.
Similar dream 2 years ago.
2 years ago, I woke and I had this dream where God was talking to me.
Uh-huh.
And I had a most incredible looking demon.
Okay, God was talking to you and you had a demon.
And I was running in this dream. And it said to stand and face your fear. And as soon as you do it, it will disappear.
It said, stay in and face your fear. Don't run from the demon. As soon as you do, it will disappear.
I faced it and it stood right here. And it disappeared.
He faced it. It stood right in front of him and it disappeared.
My daughter, I have a 7-year-old daughter. I said, where is she? Is she okay? And it said, she's okay because she feels no fear.
Ah, his daughter was okay because she felt no fear.
And then at that moment, when the demon disappeared, I looked out a window in this building, and the bright light stood above, swirling vortex, came right on top of me, through my body.
Mm.
In a minute, it just felt like, for 15, 20 minutes, it vibrated through my being.
He said a swirling vortex of light came down over his body and vibrated his being for 15 or 20 minutes.
My wife came into the room. I was awake. I could feel I was in bed, but I could not see, do anything.
Mm.
The voice said to me, send the message that fear is holding everyone back from the Creator.
Yeah, send the message that fear is holding everyone back from the Creator. That's awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you. And on that note, my clock says it's 3:33, which is a little good synchronicity, a little good nudge. So, sacramental nature of all things. Fear, we give so much credit to it. We give it credit that it's a credible source of information. And yeah, you want to do something about it if you have a threat, but you don't want to be living in fear. Fear is a call to action, just like anger. But you use the call, you answer the call, and you follow through. Once you can do this, your identity shifts to the cosmic awareness, and your body dissolves into pure light because you literally have become the universe. So you don't need a body anymore because that's not who you are anymore. You've become everything around you. You re-merge into the universe, and you become the wisdom body or the rainbow body. And this attainment is called Jalus, or the great attainment, the perfected body. And again, this is what it looks like. So when you understand what the core of this whole land was for in the 1950s, the beings that came here were trying to do for us what they did for the Tibetans when Padmasambhava reached them. They were trying to give us this knowledge. They're trying to teach us about this transformative event that's going to happen on Earth that apparently is something that will happen to all of us if we're ready for it, and if we're not ready for it, then we end up being moved to another planet. So it's a very interesting experience that's going to be happening here. Now, I want to start showing you some of the physical artifacts that were left behind by Padmasambhava. In the Asura cave, he actually reached his final enlightenment. This is when he started to develop all the most powerful magical skills. And you can still go to the cave in Pharping, Nepal, 2 hours by bus in a dangling bus ride from Kathmandu to get there, but it is worth it. It's a holy site of pilgrimage also for the Hindus, and they have the Dakshin Kali temple there, and Padmasambhava has left behind handprints, footprints, and manifested images in rock that you can actually go see. You can actually go on vacation and see it. So this is what it looks like when you're in the area. This is the stairwell that you walk up to get to the Ashura cave. This is what it looks like when you get to the top of the stairs looking out. This is the final stairwell. There's these prayer wheels. You can spin them as you go up, and those are the mandalas that he was chanting. Now you go through this little crevice. There's regular rock on one side, a wall on the other. Now you're almost there. You go into the square, and you see this little temple. That's the Hindu side. Then over on the other side is Padmasambhava's cave. And here's the doorway into the cave. You walk up to it, and you'll notice over there on the left-hand side of the door is going to become a very important spot. You can't really see it up close now. I'm just showing you some of the farther away images. But now let's look at this. After he came out of the cave and had ascended, or had at least almost gotten there, he had gotten to the point that he could control matter, he mushed his handprint into the stone. And many people now put their hand on the handprint, and that's why it's got all that black around it. That's all the grease from people's hands. But look at it up close, and let's count the fingers, and you might start to notice something a little strange here. There's 6 fingers on that hand. Very obviously, undeniably, a 6-fingered hand. Just like those panels on what? The Roswell crash that I showed you. Isn't that interesting? It's the same people. That's why he had to pencil in that weird little mustache to fit in with the natives. That's why he had those big weird eyes. We don't know where he's from. And, you know, it's kind of not really important. We're all the same being, ultimately, from the cosmos. So you can go there and you can see this handprint. This wasn't carved. This was witnessed that people saw him do this. He mushed his hand right into the rock. And you can see multiple images of that. So then let's go inside the cave. We go inside the cave and we see these butter lamps, as they're called. And there's a little kind of stone hole underneath in the stone. Now we're looking at the altar that's there, and it appears that these little black sculptures that you see were actually made by his consciousness, and he mushed them right out of the rock and sculpted them just with the power of his mind. I'm not entirely sure that that's what that is, but I'm pretty sure that that's what those are. Those are actually manifestations from the rock. This is another one. Notice the shape. And that should look familiar to you now, because this is where he actually carved the image of the Ah into the stone with the power of his consciousness. And if you're lucky enough to go there, then they'll actually do you the kind favor of whapping you in the head with paper. Just to sort of wake you. No, I mean, it's just a blessing that they give you. I'm just being silly. I don't think it hurts. So this is really fascinating because unlike Christianity, in which, well, is there anything left behind from the crucifix? We don't know. Can we find the tomb that Jesus rolled the stone away from when he came out ascended? We don't know. Maybe. Israel might tell you that they've got it, but you don't really know if it's true. There's nothing definitive. But here we have a guy who did the same things as Jesus, and there's all kinds of stuff we can see. Another one is Yanglesho Cave. So here's that monastery, and you notice there's this red stairwell that you go up. There's the stairwell, and these very colorful gates that they keep repainting. And you go inside. This is the upper Yanglesho Cave now, and this is what you see in there. And they have some stuff up there, and then you go to the lower cave, and you see this place called Self-Arisen Terra Temple. And these two are interconnected by an air passageway. So that's how you get to the cave. And this is the monastery built outside, and there's another view of it. So you walk up and you go to this temple, and then you go inside and they have a donation box, and there's a guy in there working. And what you actually see is this. And you can't really see it too well yet, but this is a statue of an elephant that Padmasambhava apparently materialized directly out of the rock. And it wasn't until I found this picture, first of all, You can actually see that's the image of Ganesh, which is one of the Hindu gods, and of course he blended Hinduism and Buddhism. And this apparently was something he mushed right out of the rock. And so that's where people leave their financial offerings. But that was created by telekinetic manipulation of stone. And this is another one that Padmasambhava created, including the paint apparently, by telekinetic manipulation of stone, the image of the Buddha itself. And then next to Ganesh, that elephant, is this image, one of the most famous ones, again created by the power of the mind manipulating the rock. And people leave little flowers on it, as you can see here. And more recently, you notice that there's a new image coming in on the top left of another little being. And apparently what people are saying is that this image is continually rising up out of the rock. It's actually still happening. And there's the area above. You can kind of see it a little bit there. And here's another shot of it where you don't see the other image as much. Here's another shot of it. I found a lot of these interesting images with the money offerings left behind. So, and then they also sell these little trinkets that are like a metallic reconstruction of what it looks like, so you have something to bring home. So now I want to talk about the footprints that Padmasambhava and a few others like him left behind to show us what he had done, that he could control matter. The Dzogchen Monastery has its own website, and it's dzogchenmonastery.cn. And you can see footprints that were left behind in the stone on this website by these masters. This is one where he did both feet at once. Here's another one where they painted it so you can see the footprint more clearly. Here's another one. Here's another one where he kind of stuck it on the side of the rock there. This is another one where the paint is going down from the top. Now notice also that the area where the toes are is unusually wide, and that becomes important later. It almost looks like flippers. Another place that is in Tibet is Leh, it's called. And this one you can't really see too well, but I just want to show you not all of them are that great. This is an area of handprints and footprints. And about the closest you can see the footprint is in this. You can kind of see it there. It's tilted off to the side. And you can see it more closely. It almost looks like a swimming flipper. Now we're going to go to Tawang, India. And this is another place where this has actually been seen. It's called the Place Blessed by the Horse, located at the tri-junction between India, Tibet, and Bhutan. 500 monks are still studying there today, and it's the largest Buddhist monastery in India. The British originally declared this area off-limits to foreigners. The young 6th Dalai Lama wrote with his finger in the stone, and he wrote Lama Jino, and it means the Lama knows. It's more freely translated as "Here we are." And this was written in 1688, and the name of the 6th Dalai Lama was Sangyang Gyaltso. And I haven't actually found an appropriate image of that writing yet. But this is located in Urgyeling. So now we have another place in India, Madhuri Lake. This is very beautiful places to live. Check this out. It really makes me want to take a vacation, I'll tell you. And beautiful monastery, and when you go there, you see this footprint that was left behind by Padmasambhava in the rock that they've painted around to make it clearer. Padmasambhava or Guru Rinpoche also left a footprint behind at Chiu Gampa Cave. This is overlooking a place called Lake Mapam. He flew there with 500 arhats from the Venuvana Monastery in India, and this is the last place that he meditated at in 876 AD, and it was believed after this that he flew off to the land of the giants and established a pure land. This one doesn't look as exciting. Oh, and it also said he'd watch over the giants, which are obviously the Anunnaki, and make sure they didn't harm other beings. So this is kind of in a desert area. It's very dry, but this is what the monastery looks like when you go inside, and apparently this was built during Padmasambhava's time by Padmasambhava and his friends, and also this stone structure. And then you go up to this altar, and in front of the altar, down there at the bottom, are actual images that he created in the rock telekinetically, as you can see there. The statues I'm not so sure about, but those little rock slabs in front, that's what he was making. So in Chiu Gampa, they have the footprint of Padmasambhava and the footprint of another guru, Nadrama, and a mani stone or wish-fulfilling stone that was brought up by Guru Rinpoche from Lake Mapam. And I talk a lot more about this in Gaiam TV. I have episodes on all this. This stone was believed to fulfill people's wishes if they took spiritual vows in front of it. Now this is where things really get interesting, because check this out. This is the only one he ever did. And remember, he had 6 fingers, so his feet are weird too. This is not a normal human footprint. There's something very unusual about the structure of that foot. Do you see what I'm saying? It almost looks like there's only 3 toes, and they're all really large. And notice also that the architecture of the bottom of the foot has this weird kind of crease in it, and it's almost like a Y shape. And then, over there on the right, you're actually seeing, and so this very well could be a toe that has 6, or this could be a foot that has 6 toes, and we're just not really able to see them clearly. But it's very clear that although it's human-like, it's not the same as our own feet. Notice also there's kind of an unusual curve in the shape of the foot, from the bottom to the top where the toes are. You look over on the right and you see these little statues of stupas that he actually created in the rock. And they're all nestled in side by side. Another Padmasambhava footprint is found in India in a place called Nako. Again, a very beautiful area with water and trees. And now this is the one that we find there. This is the shrine. And when you look up close, you again see his footprint. And there's also a self-arisen image off there to the right. And people leave money behind, and it's a place for offerings to the monastery. So notice that the whole toe area is unusually wide compared to the heel, which is consistent with somebody having 6 toes instead of 5. Then at Sopema, we have another footprint that is left behind. So means lake, and Pema means the lotus, so it's Lotus Lake. Now this is where Padmasambhava found his wife at the end of his life. She was the daughter of the king, and Padmasambhava, she was very interested in his spiritual teaching, so he taught her what he knew, and she started to develop magic powers as well. The king got very upset by this and ordered him to be burnt alive. And the legend has it that after an entire week of him being in flames, that he emerged completely alive, and he looked younger. Now he looked like a 16-year-old young man. And he popped out from a lotus, which is some kind of manifestation that he created with his mind. The king was then very sorry, said, "Wow, you really are the real thing. Go ahead and marry my daughter." And the daughter was named Yeshit Sogyal, and this is the actual lake where all this happened. You can still visit it today. It's still there. Very interesting. And then you can go up and see, as it says here, Guru Padmasambhava's footprint. So you walk in there, you see these butter lamps. They burn the butter with a wick in it, and then this is the footprint. This is probably the best-looking one out of all of them. And they put gold paint around it. You notice on the right there, you also see a mandala that he mushed into the rock. This is a pretty darn good picture of it, and this one's even better, really nice and sharp. You can see the mandala, you can see the footprint. He just mushes it right in like a cookie cutter. And here's a close-up of the footprint. And this is what it looks like as you walk outside. Then we go to another place now in Nepal called Muktanath. Again, beautiful mountains, wonderful scenery, beautiful place to visit. It is kind of like a desert climate again. And then right here in Muktanath, he actually put 2 feet down at the same time, and you have 2 of Padmasambhava's footprints. So he's kind of like leaving us a trail of clues of all these places that he went. The next one is in Bhutan, which is also in that same area around Tibet, called Takhtsang. And Takhtsang is where Padmasambhava meditated for 3 years, 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days, and 3 hours. The 333 concept comes up again. And it's the best known out of 13 Takhtsang or tiger lair caves in which he meditated. And this was a monastery that was built there in 1692 by Gyaltse Tenzin Rabje, and it's become the cultural icon of Bhutan. This is one of the most incredibly beautiful monasteries in the whole world. There's a festival in March or April you can go to, but check this out. I mean, if you haven't ever seen it before, it's like, wow. It's built into the side of the mountain. Movies have sometimes showed it. There's these beautiful trees around, and it's called the Tiger's Lair. So Yeshit Sogyal, the former wife of the emperor, or the daughter of the emperor rather, that's a misprint, former daughter of the emperor, became a disciple of his in Tibet. She transformed herself, the story goes, into a tigress. She became able to shapeshift, and they flew together from Tibet to Taksang. So they traveled here by air. And this was a place consecrated to tame the tiger demon. They were trying to work out their anger, so they probably fought a lot in this cave. And he performed meditation and emerged in 8 incarnated forms or manifestations. Now, this apparently is real. If you can get a look at that, that's amazing. Somebody climbed up the side of this mountain and did this incredible amount of carving into this very precarious shard of rock up there in that same area. That is really trippy. So here's the monastery from the ground looking up. You can see it's just built right into the side of the mountain. Here's another view of it. And again, you can see all these and more on Gaiam TV. I did a whole series of episodes on this. And it's just spectacularly beautiful place to go. In fact, we may use this location in my film, but I probably shouldn't say too much more about it. But it's a beautiful, beautiful place. And that's another painting of Padmasambhava you can see there. So then we have someone who is believed to be the reincarnation of Padmasambhava, who came along later and was at that same monastery, Tenzin Rabje. He was believed to be his reincarnation, and that monastery you just saw was built by him in 1692. And he was seen inside and outside the cave at the same time, so that means he was bilocating. He could be in more than one place simultaneously. He was able to feed everyone who showed up, even if they had a small quantity of food. He could multiply the food with some sort of telekinesis. Despite that crazy, precarious trail to get up there, no one ever got injured going there. And he also could create a light show and project forms of animals and religious symbols in the sky for the people that visited. He also showed them a shower of flowers that would manifest in the air and vanish before they hit the earth. And again, why wouldn't this be real? If so many people witnessed this, and this is something that was really happening at this beautiful location, then why wouldn't it be true? Why would people all lie about something like this? And there's also some temples up there that you can meditate in, like this little place. Is very beautiful mountain view around it, as you can see here. And check out what it looks like when it's wintertime. Unbelievable. Snow-capped mountains, it's just gorgeous. Then we have another place called Chodrak Ganpa in Bhutan. I'm trying to get through these so you can see as much as possible in the time we have. It's on the northern ridge of Chum Valley, set against a sheer rock face again. You have to climb up for 1 hour to get there on a steep, steep climb. Padmasambhava apparently arrived here on a tigress and meditated there in the 8th century, and both he and Yeshit Sogyal left their footprints behind in the rocks. Then negative ETs apparently took over and had a camp there, and the whole place was abandoned from 1250 to the 18th century. So this does appear to be negative beings, extraterrestrials, that had lived there to try to sap up the energy. And it wasn't until this monk Nagwang Trinley exorcised the demon in the 18th century. So this was a war, a very real war. So this is another beautiful location. Check out these mountains. And there's the monastery, and there's the stupa in the monastery. There it is more up close. And here's one of the doors to get into the monastery. Now this appears to be self-arisen characters that Padmasambhava carved in with telekinesis into the side of the rock, giving that phrase that he has arrived, that he has achieved the rainbow body. And that's one of the footprints right there. And here's another one of the footprints. At Chodrak, we have the 5th Karmapa. He's one of the main leaders. And he also achieved rainbow body and was able to make his own footprint. Now he's got a normal foot. No 6 toes here. And then we head over to Vietnam, and we've got the center of Zen Buddhism. This is Ban Tan Men, or Ban Chan Tien. The Mountain of the Way is how it's translated. This is on a tourist location. You can go see it. And it's a huge statue of Buddha, and the footprint is nearby. It's 18 meters tall. And it's a museum relic of Ak Eo. There's 2 deep footprints that are pressed into the mountain of stone that's right nearby. So this is, first of all, the mountain that you go to, the structure. And then when you go up to the top, there's the footprint. So you can see the toes, you can see the shape of the foot. And then another Zen monastery, the actual name Zen is Thien, and we just pronounce it Zen or Zen. That's where it comes from. Thich Nhat Hanh is the most well-known practitioner. He advocates mindfulness. This Zen Buddhism started in Vietnam in 580 AD, and the Indian monk Vinitaruchi traveled there after completing his studies, and he studied with the third Chan of Chinese, Senkan. They only had one disciple, but this created a huge effect on Vietnam, and this is the origin of Zen Buddhism. And in Zen, they all wear yellow, as opposed to in Tibet, where they wear blue and orange. So there's only a couple footprints in Zen Buddhism, so unfortunately they didn't seem to be as successful in getting people to do this as the Tibetans, but it's still a very useful practice. So then last but not least, I want to show you some more of these footprints from all over the world, because they don't only show up in Tibet. There was a French website I found, and this is the address, Maggie du Buddha, where there's multiple shots of footprints that I couldn't find anywhere else online. This is Guru Rinpoche's footprint near a place that's actually called Dzogchen. And you can see that the water is now draining out the bottom when it rains. And this is the area right near where it's found. They also feature, I featured in actually the Zigar Drukpa Kagyud Monastery. Just a beautiful place to visit again in that area. It's much more recent. They built it only recently. And there's also Zangdok Palri Palace, which is there. Again, a very beautiful place to go. Lots of colors. So another one that has some really cool stuff nearby with footprints and whatnot is in Tibet, called Mount Kailash. And this is a beautiful picture of that. And I'd love to go there. I mean, it looks a lot like Banff to me. There's a place in Banff that I visit that's like that. Lake Louise looks a lot like that. If you've ever been there, it's wonderful. There's a 24-hour webcam around that mountain? Well, I didn't know that. So, so the footprints of Padmasambhava and Yeshe Tsogyal are at that mountain, right near there. There's a temple you can go to, and this is what they look like. They've been touched by many, many people, and the hands have worn it down. It's kind of polished the stone. But they both left their footprints side by side. Another place is Yupeng, and this is actually, really don't have time to go through all this stuff because I don't want to get yanked off stage here. But these are two Tibetan towns that you can only get in by a donkey. They've only had electricity since last year, or 2013 thereabouts. This is a beautiful place, one of the best places to go apparently in Tibet. The mountains are just insane, as you can see here. And you'd be sleeping in this wonderful little wooden cabin. You can smell the wood. It's gorgeous. And when you're there, one of the things you get to see is the Pima Wangyal footprint, which is right here. And we also see this other footprint in Tibet called Lama Dorje Sangwa. And there's that one. And we can get a closer look at it. We also have the footprint of Milarepa. And that's been painted gold. We also have the footprint of Jingten Sumgon at Drikung Gongpa. Another one. So then worldwide, we have them in France, and they're not actually that amazing, but there's one in France. You can kind of see it. One of the Catholic saints, Saint Dizier, created a footprint right here. There's a footprint in Normandy, and because they didn't know any better, they said it must have been made by the devil. So there's that Normandy footprint. Or in Turkey, they say, well, it must have been Satan. But it's a large foot. This is one of the giants, so they put all their money in there. In Ireland, we have the footprints of St. Patrick. Again, these people, once you become a saint, you realize you can do this. You can control matter. I can't really see that footprint very well, but apparently it's there, where his hand is. That's the discoloration. In Scotland, there's one called the footprint of Dunod. Again, it's a saint. That one's pretty darn clear. And even at Tintagel Castle, you have King Arthur. Apparently King Arthur did it and left his footprint behind. If you go to Israel and Damascus, or Syria rather, you can find the footprint of Moses. Here it is. And at the Chapel of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, you have the footprint of Christ. This is believed to have actually been made by Jesus. But it actually is a little harder to see than a lot of the other ones. You can only kind of really see the one on the left. Another alleged footprint of Jesus is at the Chapel of the Ascension in Jerusalem. And you can kind of see it there. It's that discoloration, a little bit of divot in the rock over there on the left. The Sikh saint Guru Nanak created his handprint in the rock right here. Chingpu Kamiyama is another one of the Tibetans, and you actually can see the treads on his shoe in the footprint. And we also have Tulshuk Lingpa at the Sinan Monastery in India, another great footprint. And here's a guy standing above the footprint. And last but not least, we have these two other handprints from Tibetan Buddhism. This is one where you can see the fingertips were pushed into the rock more than the rest of the hand. And this is a woman who actually pushed her whole hand into the stone as well. So here's a book that I highly recommend you get for further research. It's cheap. There's lots of them out there. I got it online for like $1, but it's really good. If you get past the beginning, the first 20 or 30 pages are kind of introduction. But if you want to know more about Tibetan Buddhist meditation, get Rainbow Painting by this man, Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche. And here he is. And he wrote another book as well called Repeating the Words of the Buddha. But he was there in Tibet, and he leaked the science of this Tibetan Buddhist meditation and how to get there. So